This special report. We're about T-minus 15 minutes from blastoff in Cape Canaveral. After a 2-day NASA and SpaceX delay, NASA and SpaceX are set to launch our 4 astronauts to the International Space Station this Friday. The crew is comprised of 2 Americans, 1 Russian, and 1 French astronaut. Together, they will be bringing the orbiting space station back to full staff after a month operating with a skeleton crew. The previous team returned to Earth in January, a month earlier than planned, in what was NASA's and the ISS's first medical evacuation in history. We have 3 guests today. I'll introduce you to 2 of them now. Chris Bachman is a reporter. He's standing by in Toulouse, France, and joining us from Nottingham is Julian Onions, an astrophysicist at Nottingham University. Chris, let's begin with you. First of all, a big mission today. Tell us a little bit more about what it entails.
Indeed, it is a big mission indeed. I'm talking to you from the Cité d'Espace, which is kind of a part research lab, part museum, and there's hundreds of people here interested. Why? Because Sophie Adenot studied here, and this city likes to modestly call itself the European capital of aerospace. And this is important because she'll be in space for 8 to 9 months, and a lot of experiments, 200 in all, between her and the 3 other crew. And really it's about looking at what will happen on the moon. It won't be a moon landing, it'll be actually spending time on the moon, and then eventually going to Mars, which will take 8 to 9 months. So they need to know how the bodies will react in 9 months, like, say, for example, on a trip to Mars. They need to cook, they need to grow food. So all of this is experiments looking at being on the moon and down the road on Mars. That's why this is such a crucial launch that we're going to be looking at in less than 15 minutes from now.
Yeah, and Chris, a lot of it goes where you are. We'll be coming back to you in a moment. Julian, I want to get your take on this mission. As Chris was saying, 8-month mission. How significant is this, Julian?
People back onto the space station after the early exit of the previous crew with a medical emergency. And they've got a lot of work to do to enhance the ability to stay in space. It's well known that we lose a lot of bone mass and things like that. So exercise is really important in space to keep up your strength. And that's one of the goals of this mission, is to investigate that further.
Yeah, but this is not the longest space mission. There have been numerous ones that have been significantly longer than this one. But talk to us, Julian, about the planning and all the care that goes into it. What do organizers have to prepare for?
Oh, well, the planning goes on for, I guess, years, a couple of years perhaps, that they've been spent training for this mission, working through the experiments, seeing what they can do. There's some of the experiments to do with food, because that's an awkward thing in space. Space food just floats around if you have anything crumbly or anything like that. So you've got to balance that against what the astronauts would like to eat and keep them enthused about the mission. So, yeah, there's a really lot of planning. I guess they've planned pretty much almost every hour of every day that they'll be doing.
Yeah, and are there any specific experiments that you're looking forward to the most on this mission?
I think there's kind of an interesting one where they've got an automated ultrasound device to measure not only sort of muscle tone, but also bone density. That seems to have some artificial intelligence in it. So it'd be interesting to see how that works out. Of course, being on a space station, you are at the mercy of what happens there. They sometimes have people with medical training, but if anything significant happens medically, they may have to evacuate like they did the last mission, or if they have sufficient ability on the station, then they can perhaps examine what's happening with things like this ultrasound device, or always talk with doctors on the ground. That's something that becomes a lot harder if you go to the moon or to Mars, for instance.
Yeah, and fingers crossed everything goes well. Julian, as you're speaking to us, we're looking at that live NASA feed just over 11 minutes to blast off. The crew's going to be riding on the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. in the Dragon spacecraft. Can you talk to us about the technologies used on the Falcon 9 and the Dragon that make this mission possible but also safe?
Yeah, I mean, they've had a few launches before on the Falcon 9 with this Dragon capsule. The Falcon 9 is a remarkable lift engine. It is quite a lot of it is reusable, so some of it returns to Earth in those fabulous landings that we sometimes see. So I'm not sure how often this particular booster has flown before, but they are getting up to like 20 or 30 uses out of each booster, which is a significant improvement on previous things like the Apollo missions, where pretty much everything was thrown away and burnt up. This is much more reusable. So that also brings down the cost and also the ability to check out systems, see what worked and what didn't, and then kind of fix it up rather than just throw it all away and build a brand new one. The Dragon capsule itself is, say, a much more modern thing than we saw on previous technologies like Apollo. It's much more like having an iPad in front of you and a lot more of that rather than hundreds and hundreds of switches. It's somewhat easier to navigate than having all those hundreds of switches that were on previous technologies. Yeah, so all in all, I think it's fantastic.
Julian, stay with us. I want to talk to Chris again. Chris, a lot of excitement here in France because Sophie Adenot is becoming just a second French woman to go into space. What more can you tell us about her?
Indeed, and she'll be the 11th French astronaut who'll be going to space. Well, of course, the most well-known recently was Thomas Pesquet. So she started, she did studies here at Geopolitical, which is just a few hundred meters from me. It's sort of the mecca for people who want to become space engineers. And she went from there. She applied to this European Space Agency. She got to the top 200. She wasn't accepted at the time. And then she went and joined Airbus and worked in helicopters. And then she went and joined the French Air Force, where she was flying helicopters on rescue missions. And she also did some studies in the States. And then 4 years ago, she applied again. There were 23,000 candidates. And she made it to the last four, and she was picked. So even though she had applied 15 years after she initially did, she got a chance. So if you're interested in space, Will, then you can still apply. But the key thing here is that she's had only just a few years to get ready for this mission. And there was a lot of intense work in France, in Germany, and in the United States to get her ready for this. She's 43 years old. She has a child. She doesn't talk about her personal life very much. And basically, she's been quarantined for the last few days, which is normal for any astronauts, so they don't get sick. But she's been able to have some close relatives with her during this time. Of course, they've now left her. She gets prepared for this launch in the next few minutes.
Yeah.
Some people pointed out she's the second French female to go to space, but she doesn't make a big issue about that. She really says this should be a gender issue, a genderless subject, really. And she's the 11th French astronaut to go into space. Yeah,
international, cooperative effort to get her up there. Julian, a question about that. Chris touched on it. The aspirations to go to space. I have a couple of boys at home will be wondering, how do you become an astronaut? Has that process changed? Where do you compare it today from where it was perhaps a generation or two ago?
Yeah, that has been quite a change, and now it is kind of open to lots of people. Before, it used to be really only military test pilots who could have the right stuff, as they used to say, to get on board. But now they're looking much more at sort of mission specialists, if you've got abilities in certain areas. So it's a much broader field. I guess when I was growing up, I wanted to be an astronaut too, but I was in the wrong country, and I also wasn't a test pilot, so I never got the chance. But these days, I think it's quite an aspirational thing to be, as they have regular calls for people to apply. So Put your children forward.
Yeah, well, even if you're not making it to space, Julian, you're helping us out here on Earth, so we appreciate it. Just wondering about how this is working. So we have on board astronauts from NASA, the European Space Agency, Russia's Roscosmos. How do they all integrate, and are there any sort of technical or cultural challenges?
I guess there must be, but certainly I know that Sophie can speak several languages. I believe Russian is still a requirement because you have to get on and be able to communicate with the Russian people on the space station. So yeah, I imagine the cultural things are quite a change. You have to adapt to living with these people. There isn't a huge amount of room on the space station. You can sort of creep away to a little corner, I guess, but you are going to run into these people quite frequently. So you have to be able to get on with your fellow occupants throughout the mission.
I'd like to bring in our reporter, Claire Paquelin, into this discussion. She's at Paris' Science Museum, Cité des Sciences. Claire, tell us a little bit about where you are and what it's like. Well, apparently we don't have a reporter. Julian, we're having technical difficulties here. I hope they're not having them in Cape Canaveral. If things go forward, then liftoff will be in about 4.5 minutes time. I'm wondering about NASA's venture into commercial partnerships. How has the space program continued, and are there concerns about commercial priorities overshadowing public interest?
Well, I guess that's probably always going to be a possibility that they will have these conflicts. But so far, it seems to have worked out pretty well. They've had some very successful missions, and it is kind of like you're just purchasing a ride up to space, and so far it worked out without. I imagine there's problems behind the scenes, but on the face of it, it all seems to be working very successfully.
Chris, you're in Toulouse, a lot of excitement. Tell us a little bit about who's there and what's taking place there.
Indeed, as I said, the Cité de l'Espace, it's kind of a part research lab, it's part kind of museum, and they've invited the public in today, and there are hundreds of people who've come in early today to watch this on a live screen, the countdown. You need to know that this is really just a few hundred meters away is the University Superior where Sophie studied. Just another few hundred meters away from where I am is the CNES, which is the National Center for Space Studies, and thousands of people work there. And of course, a lot of, I think there's 25,000 people work for Airbus, some of them in space here in Toulouse as well. So it's really, it's really at the core of everything that we're watching right now today. Also, just to pick up on what you said earlier about Sophie and the rest of the 3 other crew members, they've spent a lot of time together over the last couple of years, intense time. And I think Sophie Adenot said recently she knows more about them and their personal lives than she ever thought she would know about anybody else. And they go through a lot of psychological tests, a lot of basically so that they can understand in such a confined space, as your guest was just saying, that how do you handle conflict? How do you handle being basically enclosed for 8 months? I mean, people are going to say that that's probably one of the toughest missions they're going to have is having to work in an enclosed space for 8 months. If she gets a chance to do a spacewalk, she'll probably be, well, she wants to do it, she'll be absolutely relieved because it might actually get her outside that enclosed space and a bit of time on her own. But really, they go through a lot of tests to see how they can handle working in a group. And that's part of the selection process, and that's how they break it down to finding just 4 out of 25,000 candidates.
Yeah, and Chris, you're in Toulouse, through the European Space Agency. We're in the midst of this modern space race. We often characterize the West being against China. What's the view like from Toulouse in regards to the space race?
No question at all. Over here in Europe, the European Space Agency looks at the amount of money that's being spent in the US with a certain amount of anxiety and jealousy. There's also a lot of anxiety about how advanced China is with its own exploration, and they seem to have a lot more money as well than the European Space Agency. And the Chinese also want to put us to get to the moon as well. So there's another race to get to the moon. And of course, on top of that, they want to get to Mars, and that's going to be extremely expensive, and the Europeans definitely can't do that on their own. But who do they deal with, basically? the relationship with Musk and what his private outfit hasn't always been that smooth. It's been bumpy at times, to say the least. But eventually, Europeans can't do it alone, even though they're obsessed as well, of course, about sovereignty these days. But one way or another, they have to find a way to stay in the space race and find partners.
All right, Chris, we're coming up on launch. We are 38 seconds out. The International Space Station, once a symbol of warming post-Cold War relations, has been a rare area of continued cooperation between the West and Russia ever since Moscow invaded Ukraine in 2022. Those geopolitical divisions taking a back seat as a space collaboration moves forward. We're 15 seconds out from launch. We're going to be listening in to the live feed.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition, and liftoff. Go Falcon, go Dragon, and Godspeed Crew 12.
And liftoff. Freedom flies bound for the International Space Station. 1.7 million pounds of thrust now propelling Falcon 9 and Crew 12. Vehicle is pitching downrange and all 9 Merlin vehicles have lit. We're getting good call-outs on the first stage performance and propulsion so far.
Plus 30 seconds into the Crew 12 mission on board Dragon and Falcon 9. The vehicle is going to throttle down in preparation for max Q. That's the largest structural load that the vehicle will see on ascent.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Good call outs there.
Stage 1 throttle down.
There's that call out for stage 1 throttle down. Pass through max Q in a few seconds here.
Max Q.
Great news. We have passed through max Q.
Vehicle is supersonic.
That call out that the vehicle is supersonic means it's traveling faster than the speed of sound.
Stage 1 throttle up.
Stage 1 now throttling up.
1 Bravo.
That call out for 1 Bravo
Copy, 1
means
Bravo.
we're in the second and final abort mode for the first stage, continuing to get good performance. The crew is now already pulling over 2 Gs. Next up, we'll have a couple events happening in rapid succession. First is that engine chill on the second stage MVAC engine, and then we'll have MECO, or main engine cutoff, where the 9 engines on the first stage will cut off ahead of the first and second stages, separating from one another. Then the single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will ignite, continuing to carry Crew 12 to orbit, while the first stage begins its journey back to Earth.
The 9 Merlin engines are starting to throttle down and standing by for MECO, or main engine cutoff.
Stage 1 throttle down.
There's that call out. And in just a few seconds here, we will have MECO stage separation, stage 1 flip maneuver for the booster to make its way back to Earth, SES-1, and the start of the boost back burn.
MECO.
2 Alpha.
Copy, 2 Alpha.
Stage separation confirmed. And back ignition.
And incredible views. We've had MECO stage separation. You can see that booster coming back down to Earth, and that MVAC engine has ignited, which you can see clearly there on your screen. And the Dragon spacecraft with Crew 12 is still attached to the Falcon 9 second stage. The next milestone that we have coming up will be the start of the stage 1 boost back burn. And that burn is the first of 3 burns that stage 1 has to help it return back to Earth.
We are now 3 minutes and 30 seconds into today's flight of Crew 12. The second stage of the lone Merlin engine has lit and continues to burn, as you can see on your screen. Stage 2 continues to be performing well with a good trajectory, and will continue firing until we reach about 8 minutes into today's flight. And we're getting our first
Dragon,
view.
SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Getting good call outs of the trajectory, as well as our first views of the crew inside Freedom. A few minutes remaining in this burn before a couple of these astronauts will experience weightlessness for the first time. The crew's G-load did dip right when we hit that MECO or main engine cutoff event, and now it's going to continue to build up again until the second stage shuts down. Everything's still continuing to go well. Now 4 minutes and 45 seconds into today's launch of Crew 12.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Second stage will continue to fire
Dragon copies, nominal.
until close to 9 minutes into the flight, which will accelerate Dragon to more than 17,000 miles per hour and place our crew in orbit. This Merlin vacuum engine can produce over 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of space.
Meanwhile, the first stage booster is now on its way back to landing zone 40. Stage 1 is coasting, has already coasted to apogee, and the grid fins are helping to guide it back to Earth. And we've already had the boost back burn, so the next event coming up will be the entry burn. That will be 3 of those 9 M1D engines reigniting, and that helps slow the vehicle down as it's re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. Once that entry burn concludes, we use the drag.
SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
We use the drag from the atmosphere to help slow the vehicle down until landing.
Dragon copies.
And that entry burn is coming up in just about 20 seconds from now. Falcon 9 does have a heat shield that is designed to protect the engines in the vehicle from that combined thermal and aerodynamic loading during max entry Q, which is the moment of max stress on the vehicle during entry.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And you've heard that call out. The entry burn has begun.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And the entry burn has concluded for the first stage vehicle. 2 of 3 burns done. Next up will be the landing burn for the first stage.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
And everything
Dragon copies.
Everything continuing to be nominal. We're about 20 seconds away or so from that landing burn starting up on the first stage. It'll be a single center E9 engine that ignites.
Stage 1 transonic.
And helps slow the vehicle down just in time to touch down for landing at our newest landing zone 40.
We have just a couple minutes.
Stage 2, FTS has saved.
The landing burn has begun. Let's watch as Falcon 9 touches down.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And what an excellent view of Falcon 9 touching down for the very first time at landing zone 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station.
Congratulations. That is so exciting to see. And on your screen, you also have a great view of the second stage continuing to fire. That burn is going to last for just about another minute. And then we'll have SECO, or second engine cutoff, which will occur where the lone Merlin vacuum engine cuts off and stops firing.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Once that happens, the second stage will continue to coast for about 3 minutes while still attached to Dragon until Dragon is then commanded to separate. At this point, Dragon will be flying free with Crew 12 on board and in Earth's orbit.
Shannon.
Copy, Shannon.
And that call out for Shannon refers to Shannon, Ireland, and is our final abort zone in the second stage. Continuing to get good performance. After this second
Stage 2
stage,
shutdown.
there we had that call out for SECO and engine shutdown.
Dragon, SpaceX, we have a nominal orbit insertion.
That is great news here.
Dragon copies, nominal insertion. Wonderful ride.
Hearing good callouts following
Launch
second
escape
stage.
system disarmed.
You heard that call out that the crew is in a nominal or as expected orbit. So again, we're going to continue to coast for a few minutes after SECO to allow those rates and motion from the burn to settle out. There are some small reaction thrusters on the upper part of the second stage that can be used to counteract any residual motion, basically making sure that we're in a stable coast before Dragon
So if you're just
separates
joining
from
us,
Falcon,
a successful launch in Cape
as you see on your
Canaveral
screen, right on time.
and a successful landing
Dragon
as
now
well. The
flying for
25-story tall vehicle with 9 engines gulping 700,000 gallons of fuel per second taking off. This was a successful launch. SpaceX's 12th long-duration crew to the International Space Station. Let's speak to our reporter, Claire Paquelin, who we tried to join earlier. She's at Paris' Science Museum, Cité des Sciences, where there was something of a watch party. Claire, tell us about the reactions that you saw there.
Certainly a watch party full of budding scientists and space enthusiasts. Let me just show you what it looks like where I'm standing, Will. People here have gathered, a few hundred people have gathered here to France's main science museum. They watched the liftoff. I'd say it was a pretty serious atmosphere. People were holding their breaths as that countdown took place. We have had a bit of clapping, but I would say people are still, I wouldn't say it's a party atmosphere here. I think people are really concentrated and listening hard to what's going on. I was speaking to people in the crowds. I spoke to some young students, one young woman telling me that she wants to be an astronaut, and of course her hero is Sophie Adenot, the second French woman to head into space after Claudie Aigneret. Sophie Adenot saying that Claudie is a huge inspiration to her. Claudie Aigneret going into space for the first time in the 1990s, and Sophie Adenot is going into space today with Claudie Aigneret's space patch. A huge inspiration for her. And the young student that we met, Sarah, she told us that, yeah, she knows it's a big dream, but watching Sophie Adenot today means that she really thinks that perhaps one day she could realize that dream. She's a scientist studying science at the university now, and she would like to be an astronaut. I also spoke to another young woman who said, I'm fascinated by space, I'm fascinated by science, but I'd like to keep both my feet on the ground. I'd like to work in space, but I'm not planning on being an astronaut.
and Claire, when you look around you, just curious, you mentioned that you spoke to those 2 young women there. Can you get a ballpark for what the average age there is?
I would say pretty young. Because this is a Friday morning, so there are actually some schools who have turned up. So teachers bringing their students to watch liftoff, and then they're doing a project throughout the rest of the year where they will be following Crew 12's mission. There's one class which will be planting seeds in their school and watching them grow during Crew 12's mission. And so this really is an opportunity for many teachers to find a really interesting and a sort of innovative way to talk about space, to get young people interested in science and actually watching a French astronaut as she carries out that space mission. There are also other young Parisians as well who are just simply interested and want to be part of the atmosphere here today at the Cité des Sciences, the Science Museum here in the north of Paris. They just want to be part of the atmosphere. But as I was saying before, I'd say it's not a party atmosphere. People are serious. There's a serious conversation that was going on before liftoff between 2 members of the European Space Agency, talking about how Sophie Adenot and the team prepared, really going into the scientific details of how this all works, what they'll be doing. Of course, their role will be not only maintaining the International Space Station, but also carrying out really important scientific work. And of course, every day doing lots and lots of exercise, because this is a very physically demanding mission that's taken Sophie Adenot more than 2 years to prepare for it. That's actually a pretty short amount of time for an astronaut. And of course, those 4 astronauts now heading into space, and everyone here just watching the screen, trying to learn as much as they possibly can and be part of the atmosphere here.
Thank you very much, Claire. Claire Paquelin reporting. Let's cross back to Nottingham and speak to Julian. Julian, as we're speaking to you, we have images of that beautiful pale blue dot that is Earth, and Crew 12 is now in orbit. I don't know if you got to hear what our reporter was saying, but there were a lot of young people at this, I guess you could call it a watch party here in Paris. Do you think space and space travel still fills the imaginations of the young the way it did back in the, say, 1960s, 70s, and 1980s?
I really hope so. I think, obviously I'm very enthusiastic about it, but I guess, it used to be the case everybody wanted to be an engine driver as a train and then a pilot. And, the astronaut is kind of the next step, being an explorer into, boldly going where no man has or no person has gone before, that sort of thing. So there's going to be a huge demand for this as the challenge of getting to the moon and other places hots up. So I really hope they're kind of inspired, and we do need those sorts of people.
Yeah, and then also wondering, so we had the successful launch, we had the successful landing. How much credit does Elon Musk deserve here?
I think he deserves a lot. I mean, he is a character that divides opinion somewhat, but the work he's done on these rockets is kind of, I guess, almost second to none. It's really quite an advance on what NASA had in the 60s. I mean, we're a lot further down the technology drive since then, but having these reusable rockets, I think, is really key, because you can just he's getting a turnaround of just a few days in some cases of launching, getting it ready again, and then launching again. So that is just an enormous improvement. Even the space shuttle was not that quicker turnaround. I think it was like 3 to 4 months between the same shuttle being able to launch again. Just this cadence is fantastic.
Yeah, that innovation and that vision to make some of this technology reusable, saving billions of dollars. I want to get your take on something that he announced recently, and that was that SpaceX is going to be merging with XAI. That's a maker of chatbots. What does that mean for the future? How does this affect the space program?
I really don't know in that case. That is a weird one. I would hope that an AI isn't going to take over control. We've also probably seen 2001 and what can go wrong when computers get too much choice in these things. I guess it's probably a marketing thing, but they may well have some uses. The great thing about AI is it can pull together all the knowledge that we have around. So if you want to know in depth about something, it's very good at bringing together all that knowledge and condensing it into something that you can look at. But I don't think I'd be that keen on having it fly me on its own at the moment.
Yeah, I'd second that, Julian. I also want to ask you, I mean, given the political situation in the United States and what we saw when Trump returned to power in his second term, there was a lot of criticism towards scientists and academics, and notably those who might have been born abroad, leaving the country to work elsewhere. Some of them came here to France. Is a day like today a sign of hope for science in the United States, or is this sort of like a sad reminder that perhaps looking ahead, more and more minds might be leaving the United States and will be relying on people from other parts of the world if the U.S. can't sort of meet its goals or targets?
Yeah, I think that's a real concern. The funding cuts in the US for science have been quite dramatic. And as you say, we've seen a lot of top US academics come across to, I know, France, Spain, Germany, some to the UK, looking for a better sort of funded chance to do research. So, I think this is a very useful mission in that we have 2 Americans, 1 Russian, and this Sophie from France, that is sort of bringing together people. But, I do hope this sort of thing continues. But at the same time, I'm really quite worried about the conditions in the US research. So many missions and opportunities are being cut in the chase for sort of funding and other things. So it's a question of what to space.
If we look at that in the short term and the medium term, I mean, help us understand. 2030 is coming up fast. That's when the International Space Station is supposed to be retired. What happens after that?
At the moment, I don't think it's really clear. The Chinese have a space station, and I guess they'll be working on that. I have heard, discussions about what will replace the current space station, but I don't think there's really anything terribly solid at the moment. So this could be a kind of an interesting thing because the space station's been there since 2000. So there's been a lot of really interesting research and things that you can really only do in zero gravity, particularly the effects on the human body, very difficult to replicate on Earth. So, yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting time, and maybe the US will lose the lead somewhat in this case.
All right, Julian, stay with us. Let's check in with our reporter, Chris Bachman in Toulouse. Chris, about 20 minutes ago, a successful launch. We also had a successful landing. What was the reaction like where you are?
Yeah, they're kind of like now leaving the big screen behind me. There were several hundred people here. There was applause. And as our colleague was saying in Paris, tense, I would say the first 9 minutes. I was told those were always the critical moments, the first 9 minutes. And after that, there was a much more relaxed atmosphere. And now, of course, the live feed has finished because we can't see it anymore. But it'll take them 36 hours to reach the International Space Station. And of course, I can assure you that having been to Super Aero, where Sophie Adenot studied, they will all be watching this closely. Well, with a little bit of jealousy as well, because if you ask anyone at Super Aero, they all want to become astronauts down the road. Thomas Pesquet, of course, went to Super Aero as well. That sparked it. She's encouraging it, of course, with her role. So now, basically, we're going to learn more about this experiment as they get off the ground, literally, in the next few months. Again, she's going to be there for 8 to 9 months. There's 200 experiments. Many of them are totally new, looking at how to grow food in space, how to cook, body, see how your body reacts. All of this with the idea that down the road, when the International Space Station gets demoffed, the next aim is the moon, keeping a human presence on the moon, and then down the road, going to Mars. I was at the Le Bourget Air Show just last year, and I spoke to a few NASA astronauts and NASA officials, and they told me that one thing which I thought was incredible was that they had thousands of people who've applied to fly to Mars, and of course it's a one-way ticket. But at the moment, there's no solution for them to come back. So the people who are volunteering to go to Mars, they'll have to stay there. It's something to think about.
It is. It's a big commitment, but it is a passion for many people that they might be prepared to die for just that. Chris, thank you very much. Chris, reporting from Toulouse, as you were saying, Sophie Adenot becoming the second French woman to travel into space. And he mentioned earlier she's one of just 5 candidates from a pool of 22,500 applicants for Europe's astronaut selection program. Here's a closer look.
During her last visit to the Toulouse space station before going into orbit, Sophie Adenot performed a final check of the scientific and medical experiments that await.
Space is the most complicated environment. Organs can move around in a zero-gravity situation. So if the machines work in these conditions, it would work on Earth as well.
I like medical experiments because they have a tangible impact that will already be felt in the coming years.
During her mission, she'll have to conduct over 200 experiments in a variety of fields.
Researchers are seeking situations of weightlessness in order to study phenomena that don't exist on Earth.
ISS astronauts spend 70% of their time conducting experiments, 2 hours a day in the gym, and the rest on maintenance. It's their only opportunity to go outside the space station, and for many, the Holy Grail.
We all look forward to it because it's the most impressive accomplishment for astronauts.
After 3 years of intensive training, Adenot knows all the procedures by heart.
By using these underwater models, we're able to simulate zero-gravity situations with an exit airlock and all of the tools that you would find in the space station in order to prepare them for these rules, and she passed with flying colors.
Amid this rigorous training, the astronaut hasn't forgotten her childhood dreams.
I also want to keep an open mind, to explore the unknown, to experience on an emotional level, seeing the Earth from up high. This beautiful blue Earth that we can see almost entirely.
A journey into the unknown to better understand our own planet.
So Sophie Adenot becoming the 11th French astronaut in space. Here's a story about the 10 that preceded her.
Jean-Luc Chrétien exits the capsule as the crowd cheers.
Jean-Luc Chrétien was the very first French astronaut back in 1982. The smile on his face says a lot about his week-long trip in space. In 1996, the first French woman took off, a trained medical doctor called Claudie Aignoret.
We needed scientists, doctors, engineers with various fields of expertise for the space station. And women felt that they could offer their experience to the crews. So female profiles started being submitted.
Images that shaped destinies.
I was 14. I used to cut out stories about her and her mission in the papers. I stuck them above my desk. When I was struggling on my maths, I'd look up. Her example inspired me.
Over the next couple of decades, 9 French astronauts take part in 17 missions. Highlights include Claudie's husband, Jean-Pierre Aignoret, spending 6 months on board the Mir space station, and Jean-François Clairvoy fixing the Hubble Space Telescope some 570 kilometers from Earth.
I often say that we can still be called explorers because we are exploring territories that are relatively unknown. An explorer is both a part of a long-standing tradition and a scout.
In 2016, a new French astronaut storms onto the scene, Thomas Pesquet. He then spends over a year in space, serving on 2 missions. He is the first Frenchman to command the ISS. Sophie Adenot hopes to become the second.
It's a great adventure. I'm really happy because I'll be able to share it with everyone. I'm going to be able to interact with all the French people who are happy to see a French and European astronaut take off.
Sophie Adenot will be the second French woman in space. She will stay 9 months aboard the ISS.
Let's cross back to Nottingham, speak to Julian Onions, an astrophysicist. Julian, we're about over with our special report here, but just wanted to end and give you one final thought. Maybe you could explain to us, in your view, what you see the major challenges confronting the space industry are, and should we be hopeful?
I would love to be hopeful, and I think I am too. So I think the next big challenge is really to go back to the moon. It's been neglected for 50 years or more. So I think that is really the next challenge, and it would teach us so much about how to live. The moon is sort of 4 days away, something like that. So you've got to be a little more self-sufficient.
And Julian, sorry, just to cut in, why would it be so important to return to the moon, and why would it teach us about how to live?
Well, I think for me, it's just about the exploration. It's kind of visiting a new place and establishing a base. But I think it will teach us quite a lot of things, and you will get a lot of spin-offs from this project about how to live in different environments. With global warming, we might have to take those sort of things back onto Earth and learn to live within restricted environments on the Earth going forwards. So I think it's all great to explore these facilities and to try and understand what we need to know about living in these restricted environments.
Julian, thank you so much for your time. Julian Onions, an astrophysicist at Nottingham University. Well, that brings us to the end of this special report here on France 24. Please stay tuned.